Did you know that Queen Elizabeth II might never have become queen if history had taken a slightly different turn? Let's dive into one of the most dramatic love stories that reshaped the British monarchy. In 1936, Edward VIII became king after the death of his father, King George V. He was seen as the young monarch who could bring new energy to the crown. But everything changed when Edward met Wallis Simpson, an American woman who, at the time, was still married to her second husband. Their relationship quickly turned into a scandal. Edward fell deeply in love with Wallis, and Wallis, in turn, was willing to leave her husband behind for Edward. It was a love affair that defied tradition, society, and the expectations of the monarchy. But there was one enormous problem: the Church of England and the British government could never accept a king marrying a twice-divorced woman whose former husbands were still alive. Edward faced an impossible choice: the crown or the woman he loved. In the end, he chose love over duty. In a move that shocked the entire world, Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson. And Wallis, on her side, gave up her marriage, her social standing, and her security, just to be with Edward. Because of that decision, Edward and Wallis never had children, and the throne passed to Edward's younger brother, George VI, who was never meant to be king. When George VI died in 1952, his daughter became Queen Elizabeth II. That is the history we know today. But now imagine an alternative history. What if Edward had chosen differently? What if he had married a noblewoman approved by the crown and the church, and had legitimate children? In that scenario, the throne would have passed to Edward's children, not to George, and certainly not to Elizabeth. She would have lived her life as Princess Elizabeth of York, a royal by birth but never a reigning monarch. Biologically, there's no real evidence that Edward couldn't have children. The issue most likely lay with Wallis Simpson, who never had children throughout her life. In truth, had Edward chosen another path, he could very well have secured a direct line of heirs, changing history forever. This story proves how fragile the line of succession really is. One man's choice, one act of love, completely altered the destiny of the monarchy. Elizabeth II, the longest-reigning monarch in British history, only wore the crown because her uncle abdicated and left no heirs. Edward VIII's decision shows us that history is not always shaped by politics or war, but sometimes by love, sacrifice, and defiance of tradition. If Edward had followed the royal path, the world may never have known Queen Elizabeth II as we do today. History reminds us that love can rewrite destinies. Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson proved that sometimes, one choice, one sacrifice, can change the course of a nation forever.